9 years ago, three young engineers founded Qure.ai with a radical idea using artificial intelligence to diagnose deadly diseases from routine x rays. Today, the Mumbai based startup operates across 105 countries, processes millions of scans annually, and has secured 19 FBA clearances. With backing from marquee investors like MSD Ventures and Novo Holdings, they are racing towards their billion lives target by 2030. The company also just bagged a major Gates Foundation grant for AI-powered ultrasound. In this episode, we speak with Qure.ai's founders Prashant Warier, Preetham Putha, and Ankit Modi about building world-class healthcare innovation from India. We explore how did they crack the US FDA approval process, why does India represent less than 10% of their hospital deployments despite being home, and what's their path to profitability after years of heavy R&D investment. It's Monday, the 26th of January. I'm Vikas Dandekar. This is Corner Office Conversation. Thank you so much, all of you, Prashant, Ankit, and Preetham, for joining us at our Corner Office Conversation, our podcast where we try to understand businesses, how they're formed, and what we have for the future. So, just to start, 2016 was the time when you rolled out your venture. That was also the time when the godfather of AI, Jeff Hinton, spoke about radiologists being on borrowed time. So that was a perfect time to start. How has it been for you for the last 9 years?
Yeah, so actually, very interestingly, Jeffrey Hinton spoke about radiologists being replaced by AI a few years after we started, about a year and a half after we started. It has been an interesting journey. I think last 9 years, for me about 10 years now. We started with AI to interpret radiology images, but over time we realized that radiology is just one part of the diagnostic process. There is a lot more involved in diagnosing a patient with a disease. And finally, the most important thing is to be able to diagnose any disease early. And for any disease, from tuberculosis to lung cancer to COPD to heart failure to stroke, if you're able to diagnose early, then the survival rate is much better. Patients survive longer, they have better lives. And that is what we have focused on, early diagnosis of conditions using the power of AI and bridging gaps in the diagnostic process. So as you think about diagnostics, there are lots of gaps. I mean, you take an X-ray and somebody says there is a abnormality on the X-ray. You have to do a follow-up CT. Many times people don't come back for the CT. So then you sort of get the CT done. There might be a nodule. You have to get a biopsy done for that. Again, that process takes time. So we are figuring out how to make that diagnostic process simplified and faster, and how do we bring AI to help diagnose conditions early. And that's been the focus of Qure for the last 10 years.
Right. Preetham, you want to come in here and share your experience? How has it been?
Yeah, I mean, just continuing Prashant's point. So it was a shift from imaging AI or interpreting findings or patterns on images to actually answering a clinical question that the physician has, and sort of that forced us into these diagnostic pathways of tuberculosis, stroke, lung cancer, now COPD. We are expanding to many more diagnostic pathways, and so we are essentially taking every opportunity to diagnose a patient early.
Ankit, let me tweak the question a little bit. So when you started, what were the triggers? Were you seeing there was kind of a gap between diagnosis or kind of a place where traditional conventional means of diagnosis can be broken, and AI had a place at that time? It's about 9 years. So, that was probably very early days.
It was early days. I mean, just to put things in context, this was 6 years before something like ChatGPT came around. I would say most of the founding team was already already trained and was building AI algorithms right from college and like much before that, since at least 8 to 10 years before Qure was founded. And the genesis was that the same X-rays that are being taken for one reason today can tell you much more about that patient, right? And all of those signs can be detected if you are not biased uh, by only what you are searching for. So that was the key insight that we had. I think after 10 years, we are at a point like, I mean, by the time this interview ends, we would have diagnosed 1,000 patients. Like 1,000 patients will have like sort of received an early diagnosis in the next 1 hour. So yeah, that's about it.
So, Prashant, normally we feel that early detection leads to more economical costs of treatment. Surgeries go down. You can actually put a patient on treatment early. Has that been some measure of your success? Have you actually counted that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think, see, that's a great question. In fact, I mean, if you look at early detection, it will reduce cost, overall cost of treatment, for example, might be lower. Surgery may not be required in certain places, right? But overall, as a company, our focus has never been on reducing cost. We realized very early that there is no point trying to reduce cost of a X-ray or a CT or trying to make radiologists more efficient. We said that's not what we are here for. We are here to be able to provide better care, improve diagnostics, diagnose early. And that has been the focus. If you look at all of our publications, we have 200 plus pieces of evidence published in the some of the top journals like Lancet or Nature Scientific and so on, right? Where what we have shown always is that we are able to diagnose more cases. We are able to diagnose cases early. And then, of course, there is the health economic impact of that. There have been studies done by various bodies which look at the health economics of diagnosing early, like you said, and there is definitely huge value to the system of diagnosing a patient early because survival is obviously better. Survival means there is an economic value.
So, from 9 years that you have been in existence, you've touched 40 million lives, and your goal is to touch 1 billion lives by 2030. Are you on track?
Yes, we are on track because I think the numbers grow exponentially. We are almost doubling the number of lives that we touch year on year. So on track, I think we'll get to that billion lives in 2030 for sure.
Right. The traction so far has been about what, 140, 150 crore in terms of your revenues. And so can you give us some kind of a feel about where you stand in terms of your revenue projections and how do you see the profitability? Because this is still a investment phase.
Our revenue is growing quite rapidly. We are 200 crores or close to that number. Still burning some money. Still, I think we're not profitable. If you look at where we are, though, right? I mean, think about it this way: that the products that we build require a huge amount of data to build. So we have to procure data. We have to get annotations done. So think about it that, I mean, you have an X-ray and you have to figure out where is the abnormality on that X-ray or a CT scan, right? So there is a radiologist who goes and marks it out. So you have to do that to train these algorithms. So we invest into all of that. We invest into everything that we do has to be validated by clinicians. We work with a Harvard Medical School or a Mayo Clinic or a bunch of NHS, Erasmus University, bunch of partners to be able to validate our technologies and publish evidence of the efficacy of our technologies. And then lastly, everything that we do classifies as a medical device, even though it's a software as a medical device. You have to get regulatory clearance. So we have to get an FDA clearance. We have 19 FDA clearances now. And that is again a costly affair. So if you look at all of that, there is a lot of investment that goes into building this product. But once the products are ready, and then the cost of servicing that is very low. I mean, you basically send a scan to the cloud, you process it, get results back. And we are at that phase where we're commercializing, we're scaling up across multiple markets. We're in about 100 plus countries, scaling up across the US hospital system as well. We'll be at a point in about year and a half, 2 years where we become profitable, and we'll see how to take it from there.
So, next question to you, Ankit. Would you be able to give us some kind of a color on the competitive landscape on health technology, imaging, diagnostics? Where does Qure.ai stand as compared to some of its maybe global peers?
Yeah. So competition wise, I don't see anyone who is doing uh, everything that we are doing today. Very few companies who are doing both AI as well as the platform and care coordination for patients within global health there. Similarly, in the lung cancer workflow, I think we are the only company who has an FDA on detecting lung nodules on chest X-rays and being able to classify them based on the malignancy risk associated with them. And competition is like sort of companies based out of say Europe, US, Israel, all of these places. But like I said, I don't see anyone who is bringing everything together like we have. And that's because there has been continuous focus on continued innovation across our product portfolios.
Have investors been patient with you? Because normally the kind of cycle that they see is about 6 years, 7 years. Beyond that, it becomes a little, how do they kind of justify the investments?
So what I think the reality is, investors invest, they have a cycle to stay in the company. When they want to exit, they can sell to another investor who wants to come in. So there are always investors who want to come into Qure. So we have also given access to some investors who came in early. They invested in 2020, they exited in 2024. But a lot of investors have also been patient with us. I mean, they understand that this is a business that takes time to incubate, to develop. And we have been fortunate to have investors like you mentioned Novo, you mentioned Merck, there is Lightspeed, Fractal has been an early investor into Qure. We've had Health Quad, which is an investor. I think we have had investors who have helped us also expand our business. They help us with connections. They help us with getting access to the market as well.
Preetham, if I can rope you in here, I've seen about 4,500 hospitals with which Qure.ai is working currently, of which just about 500 are from India. It's probably about less than 10%. So, why do you think is that gap? Is it getting difficult for Indian hospitals to accept a big change like adoption of AI tool? What are the reasons?
So I don't know if you've seen this viral post on LinkedIn where at AIIMS, right? So if you get an X-ray in AIIMS Delhi, the report that's sort of generated as a prelim is generated by QXR, which is our product, right? And it's true with CMC Vellore and a lot of other marquee hospitals in India, because in India the problem has always been that it's a heavily resource constrained setting, except in major private hospitals. So radiology as a service is very scattered. A lot of radiology is done by physicians themselves. The digitization aspect of it is also poor. Again, that is changing rapidly with the digitization and the digital infrastructure push that is sort of there in India at this point. But the other reasons again are also economic, right? So you need to sort of figure out the economic model to deliver these at scale, right? So now we are talking about deploying in say 1,000 hospitals in a particular state, and that needs a lot of political will at this point, right? So there are no obvious funding mechanisms like they exist in TB, and happy to say that that has been changing rapidly over the past year, and we made significant strides.
So, in India itself, we have seen the TB program, how Qure.ai is working closely with some of the state governments. Can you give us some kind of a picture, Prashant, on how exactly you see the future panning in terms of your quick traction from where you are right now?
I think India, the bigger healthcare, I mean, the biggest healthcare provider is the government. And if you look at tuberculosis, which is the first sort of product that we launched and the first problem that we solved, more than 1/4 of the world's TB cases come from India. So India is by far the largest, highest burden TB country. So we really believe that there is a substantial opportunity for us to make an impact on tuberculosis in India. And one of the projects that we did in Mumbai is a very interesting one, where we said that every X-ray taken in the BMC, right, will automatically be processed by Qure. And if we find signs of TB, that patient will be then sent for a follow-up sputum test. There is a sputum test that you do to confirm TB. And what we found is that out of 100 patients that are diagnosed with TB now, about 65 came through a normal TB diagnosis pathway where they were suspected of TB and they got diagnosed like that. But 35 came through this innovative pathway where people came in not knowing they had TB, and they were not even the doctors did not do an X-ray suspecting TB. They just did an X-ray for something else, and we found TB on that X-ray. And so 35% of cases were found because Qure was there interpreting that X-ray, and there was this automatic push that was happening. So there is a substantial opportunity to radically improve TB diagnosis in the country using AI, using Qure.ai. I mean, this is only in Mumbai. Now think about all of India. I mean, if you're talking about 10,000, 20,000 X-ray machines, right? You deploy AI on top of it and make sure that every chest X-ray that's taken automatically gets a interpretation for TB. And if you see a risk, you do a follow-up sputum test. That's the path we are working towards. I'm very excited about what we can do in India. And there is a really substantial opportunity to work with the state governments in eradicating TB in India by 2030.
Right. Even for lung cancer, I think that also works very well, right? Where a normal radiology will not work, but even a small kind of a spot probably will give you some kind of a clue of what's going wrong.
Yeah. So we have a suite of lung cancer products, but I think the most innovative one is the one that we have on a chest X-ray. Now, typically, if you look at lung cancer screening, if a doctor suspects, if a pulmonologist suspects that the patient has lung cancer, they would do a chest CT, a low-dose CT scan, right? They would not recommend a chest X-ray. But there are 1.3 billion chest X-rays taken around the year for routine reasons, right? And on those X-rays, you can typically detect nodules, right? Now, you cannot afford to do a CT for everybody who has a nodule on the X-ray. It's just not feasible. So, because out of 100 X-rays, 10 will have nodules, right? So, what we built is a risk score. We said out of these 100 X-rays, there will be 10 that have nodules, but we'll find one which is a high-risk nodule. And for that nodule, you can now do a CT, right? And this was something that we started innovating in 2020. We partnered with AstraZeneca in this innovation, and then we did a study called the CREATE study, which was done across multiple countries, where we were looking at the efficacy of this nodule detection. And we found that if you do that CT, 54% of those patients actually are positive on that CT. So it's extremely very accurate at detecting risk of lung cancer on a routinely taken chest X-ray. So imagine all of us going to the clinic to do an X-ray for annual checkups, infectious conditions, TB screening. I mean, there are n number of reasons to do an X-ray. And on those routine X-rays, now we can find signs of lung cancer and triage those patients for a CT. This X-ray based innovation still remains the biggest innovation that we've done.
Is this also something that the US has applied in their own healthcare system?
US is also now applying it in their system. Certain hospitals, we are now, the nodule detection algorithm is now getting deployed across many sites in the US.
So tell us about the US approval process for your systems, the models that you follow. Do you have to submit a lot of patient data for approvals? What kind of a rigor do they follow for approvals of these processes?
So typically the approval, they are looking for the safety and the efficacy of the technology. One is that it should be effective. If it's not adding any value in the diagnostic process, typically they want us to compare against the standard of care. So in this case, I mean, if you are detecting a nodule, you're comparing against a human detecting a nodule. Think of it this way, that you will have somebody somebody read without Qure's assistance, and a radiologist reading a scan without Qure's assistance, with Qure's assistance, and you're comparing what is the improvement that Qure brought in that read with the assistance that we provide. Now, all of this has to be done with a US radiologist. It has to be done on US data, American data. We sort of have to work with some of the large hospital systems to be able to run these studies, run these clinical trials. And that is where a lot of investment goes as well.
Prashant, when you founded this company, I read that you kind of came back from the US and you stayed here and you were not able to go back because of some fiascos that happened. Then this seeded in your mind. Take us through those days.
So I was running another AI startup which was in advertising technology, and I sort of got an opportunity to have an exit for that startup. Fractal wanted to acquire that startup, so they acquired that startup in 2015 October, and Fractal brought me on board as a chief data scientist of Fractal in 2015. But I was always keen on building products, and so I was chatting with Srikanth from Fractal about what we could do together, and he said, why don't we incubate a startup within Fractal? And that is how the idea of doing something innovative using AI came about. It was not focused on healthcare in the beginning. We thought we'll look at multiple opportunities. We looked at education, looked at healthcare, looked at advertising, because I came in from that, right? But then we felt like, I think healthcare is an opportunity. We thought, noble cause, let's build something with AI in healthcare. And I started reaching out to folks to get them on board. So Preetham was connected to me by somebody that I knew from my previous startup. And Preetham came and joined us in February of 2016. And then another friend of Preetham's, Shashank, he was our ex-CTO. He's not with Qure anymore, but him and Preetham joined on the same day. And so they came on board within 2-3 months of me starting this idea and thinking about this idea. And then Ankit joined us about a month back. He interviewed for another role at Fractal, interestingly, and they connected him to me. And I said, okay, why don't you come join Qure? And that was the founding team. We formally sort of came up with the name Qure sometime in May, June 2016. Company was formally set up around that time as well. There is a reason why we sort of chose radiology, but we figured that radiology is the direction we go in, and sort of built out a radiology AI portfolio. And then, of course, we evolved from there to where we are today.
Prashant, what I would like to know from you is some of the key milestones that you achieved, which gave you that next phase of maybe the deals that you did,
The first big milestone was getting access to a lot of data. So where we sort of, in a matter of month or 2 months, we partnered with very large hospital systems in India, where we were able to access their radiology data. And typically hospitals store 10 years of history, 7 to 10 years of history, anonymized patient data, but gave us access to millions of radiology scans, billions of images that went into training our algorithms. The other key milestones, I would say, one milestone was getting our first FDA clearance. In 2020, we got our first FDA clearance. So that was, I think, a big milestone. Other milestones, I would say, first customer was a big milestone. First funding in 2020. Again, Sequoia invested into Qure in 2020. That was a big milestone. First WHO endorsement. WHO said that our solution can be used autonomously, and this is the most scaled autonomous AI use case in the whole world. So that's again a milestone for us. So I think there are many milestones that we've had over the last 9.5, 10 years.
So where do you see the next few segments opening up? You said you're getting into new segments. So what are those, and how will those pan out?
So we are getting into more disease areas. So I think the key for us is that we are in about 4,800 hospitals around the world in about 105 countries. And as you deploy your solutions, I mean, you are integrating with EMR systems, you're integrating with PACS. You are finally providing a solution to an end user who's a radiologist, pulmonologist, neurologist, right? And as you look at the workflows that we have created, it's very easy for us to now add more disease areas to our product. So now if you want to be able to diagnose COPD early, or if you want to be able to diagnose coronary artery disease early, right? It's just a matter of changing something in the back end, and then we can create a pathway to be able to create a risk score and a flag for those conditions. And as we are scaling up, that's where we are going. We are trying to improve the number of, or increase the number of diseases that we can detect early, and building more algorithms to help early detection.
Right. One last quick question. Whenever we talk about AI and data, one common question that comes up is about who owns that data, and how do you actually deal with its privacies, and it's a lot more difficult to handle. So what happens to that?
So we are very clear that any data that we procure for training is with the consent of the hospital, and we get it from the hospital with the consent of the patient. Anonymized patient data. So any training data is anonymized patient data with the consent of the patient that is coming from the hospital. Any data that we get for inference is not used for training. So we get tens of millions of scans every year for inference. We don't use that for training at all. We don't touch that. We don't use that for our algorithms.
And the training keeps happening, is it? I mean, now you probably have what, more than millions of images?
We have 1.5 billion images in a database right now. So it's not a continuous learning system. Unfortunately, the regulatory clearances in this space allow you to launch a model, basically you have to get that model, whatever is the current version of the model, you have to get that cleared, and that is what gets deployed on the production environment. And if you have a newer version of the model, then you have to get that cleared and then deploy in the production environment. I mean, there is no continuous learning happening. We improve the algorithm, there will be a new version, then that gets deployed. But it's probably every month or every 2 months. Incremental in nature.
So, Ankit, one quick word from you on what exactly do you see coming into the future? How do you see this whole enterprise develop as you kind of reach out for your next milestone?
Right. So as we see the advent of AI making it more and more easy to build new things, we are seeing it internally as well. A lot of teams are using numerous AI tools to sort of come up with markups very, very early. I think the only mode that remains is then the distribution and the speed of execution. So we are very focused on that. Like Prashant said, we already have access to close to 5,000 hospitals. What more can we do for them? What other problems can be solved for them? Taking it from there and becoming the intelligence layer within the hospital systems across the world to help make every diagnostic decision is the pathway to the vision of touching 1 billion lives. And that's what we are very, very focused upon. And I'm quite sure we'll going to do it in the next few years.
All right, great. Thank you so much. And we'll keep watching as you grow. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Qure.ai's journey underscores a critical reality. Indian deep tech can compete globally. With 200 crore rupees in revenue, rapid scaling, and profitability projected in 2 years, they are proving healthcare AI is essential for early diagnosis and better treatment outcomes. That's it for today. You were listening to Corner Office Conversation. This episode was produced by Anirban Chaudhary, sound designed by Amrit Reggie. We hope you liked the conversation. This is Vikas Dandekar wishing you a very happy Republic Day. Keep listening.